All right, so it says Alana parks her car in a lot and charges by the quarter hour. The table shows the parking fees in dollars with respect in hours. Okay, so it looks like we have time and we have the fees that you have to pay for parking. So then the time and the parking, we got to figure out basically which one's dependent and which one's independent. All right. The easiest thing to do is to figure out which one is the dependent variable. So think carefully. Does the time that somebody spends in the parking lot depend on the fee that they pay? Or does the fee that they pay depend on how much time they spend in the parking lot? Which depends on the other? So if I get in my car and I'm in a bigger city and I go to park somewhere, I'm going to pay money per hour. So remember, I said anytime you see per something, whatever the quantity is that follows per whatever that is, that's usually the independent variable, and the thing before that is the dependent. In other words, the parking fee depends on the amount of time that I spend in the parking lot. So in this scenario, my parking fee is the dependent variable, right? Well, that doesn't quite fit in there, but we'll just put it right here. And then the time that I spend there is independent. Now, this is kind of hard, but like independent, I could choose to stay an hour. I could choose to stay 2 hours. I could choose to stay 15 minutes. It doesn't really matter. I could stay as long as I want to. But depending on how long I stay, my fee will be more or less. So the fee depends on the time. Here's another clue I want you to think about. Anytime time is involved, if one of the quantities in time, 95% of the time is the independent quality. Okay? Almost always. So the independent variable then is always associated with which letter? The x variable, right? And the dependent quantity is always associated with the y values. So time is the independent variable and should be placed on the x-axis. And parking is the dependent variable, and that should always be placed on the y-axis. In other words, when I go to graph this thing, I'm going to want to graph it in my xy plane with the time, comma, then the parking fee. So when I go to graph that on my xy plane, the x coordinate will always be time, and then my y coordinate will be the parking fee. So this is y, and this is the x-axis. Does that make sense?